Welcome to the Postpartum is Forever podcast. My name is Keturah Stoltenberg. I am a mother of 2 young men and a postpartum doula. This podcast is dedicated to all mothers and is a place to hear honest, relatable conversations with the intention of helping mothers feel seen, heard, supported, and valued. I believe that postpartum is forever and that sharing our stories is a powerful way that we facilitate connection with ourselves, our children, and our community. Thank you for being here. Hello and welcome to the Postpartum is Forever podcast. This is the 3rd episode in a series of solo episodes that I will be doing on the wonderful topic of matrescence. In episode 6 of this podcast, I introduced the word matrescence, which in simple terms refers to the transition of a woman when she becomes a mother and what it truly means to grow into a mother. In episode 6, we discussed the origin of the word itself, the original meaning and the intention behind the word matrescence, and the ways in which it can be compared to the transition that happens to a girl in her adolescence. And then in episode 11, we discussed baby brain and the ways in which a woman's brain changes when she becomes a mother. 2 broad ways that her brain changes related to increased plasticity and also production of and receptivity to oxytocin, and why these adaptations are now her superpowers. If you haven't yet listened to either episode 6 or 11, then I invite you to go back and listen to those episodes, as it will give you greater insight and more context into this current episode. Today, I am going to delve deeper into the ways in which a woman's identity changes when she becomes a mother. When I became aware that matrescence could be compared to adolescence, it made a lot of sense to conclude that just like adolescence is a rite of passage, both a biological transition and a developmental milestone, one that is both exciting and unnerving at the same time, then matrescence is also a rite of passage, both a biological transition and a developmental milestone, one that is also both exciting and unnerving at the same time. Let's take ourselves back to life as we have experienced it in the first 20 years. This period of time has involved being born, the early stages of dependency, going through toddlerdom, beginning the process of partial separation from our primary caregiver, either through daycare, preschool, or our schooling years, in all of its various stages. There are many developmental milestones, particularly during the first 7 years of life, and then again in adolescence. This has likely been accompanied by education, a support structure to offer assistance through, and being around those in our environment who are experiencing similar changes in our brain and body. We also know that there will be an end date or conclusion of these stages. In other words, we move forward, we go to the next stage. Does the same process happen in matrescence? Does it have a beginning, some milestones along the way, and then an end? Let's explore that. Many of us see having a baby as a life progression, a milestone to a normal sequence of events. We are born, we get an education, we grow up, we find suitable employment, unite with a life partner, and then have a baby. It's just the next thing we, inverted commas, do, the next stage of life. Whilst that might be true, there is so much more involved in this life-changing and life-challenging transition. However, we go into it not knowing that whilst this is a beautiful and meaningful stage of life, it is also a powerful and uprooting stage. And this is why the disruptions to the so-called, inverted commas, normality The upheaval, the chaos in the early years can feel so surprising, unexpected, and often overwhelming. There's minimal education and therefore generally no preparation and quite often very little support. Of course, from a hormonal, physiological and reproductive perspective, there is a window in our childbearing years that has an end date. However, from a psychological, emotional and learning perspective, there is no end point. Matrescence will last for a lifetime. Let me say that again. Matrescence will last for a lifetime. Hence why I chose the intentional name of this podcast, Postpartum is Forever. Sure, it evolves, has seasons when our matrescence is more prominent or more intense, when we feel challenged or triggered by mothering experiences, and during aha moments and epiphanies. But even when this mother feels back in her flow, back to normal as it were after childbirth, deep down inside this woman has changed in almost every way. She is a different person. Now, I know that for many women, this realization can feel unsettling. It can bring a level of discomfort, confusion, vulnerability, frustration, anger, and mostly fear. But let me assure you, this time of deep transformation will be worth it. With a little time and patience, followed by a potential cracking open, it will gift you a multi-layered understanding of your identity as you have known it to date, put pieces of your life's puzzle together in ways you hadn't realized, and welcome change in your perspective of life and what you value most. So let's look at some of these changes. The most obvious one would be to state that this woman has an additional title to her name, mother. It could be mother of two, mother of twins, mother of boys, and so forth. But there is also so much more to the evolution of this identity. Remember we talked about the changes that can be felt through both adolescence and matrescence? They included hormonal, biological, physiological, structural, neurological, emotional, psychological, social, relational, behavioural. It's easy to rattle off these words, but let's give some more detail. Hormonal. Now, this is a huge topic in itself, but for the purposes of this discussion on identity and motherhood, this is what I'd like to say. In simple terms, a hormone is a chemical substance produced in the body that controls and regulates the activity of certain cells or organs. Hormones are like messengers that move from one part of your body to another, shouting out orders to keep things running smoothly. Each hormone has a specific function. So what does this mean for a mother? Well, the hormonal surges are huge in pregnancy and they plummet pretty quickly after childbirth. Just for context, but without going into all of the functions of these hormones. Estrogen increases up to 30 times your pre-pregnancy level. Progesterone increases to 10 times your pre-pregnancy level in the last trimester. Cortisol production increases to 3 times pre-pregnancy levels. It is likely that the baby via the placenta is trying to keep the mother healthy, alert, and energized. I love that part. I trust you are enjoying this episode. I know that if you are listening to this podcast, you are likely a woman who deeply cares about her mothering practices. I invite you to sign up to my email list found on my website, motherhoodwithketurah.com.au, for semi-regular emails that include blogs, recipes and information relating to a variety of motherhood topics. If you are pregnant or know someone who is, head over to my website and sign up to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and important contacts list. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast. It really does make a difference. Back to the episode. But what about after birth and the delivery of your placenta? What happens to those hormones? Estrogen levels drop by an enormous 90 to 95%, whilst your progesterone levels will drop to nearly zero within the first 48 hours after birth. So think about 3-day blues. The level of CRH, which is a brain hormone that facilitates cortisol production, will also plummet. And without adequate support, your CRH levels will not return to normal. Low cortisol increases the risk of postpartum autoimmune disease. In addition, if you have low estrogen, low progesterone, low cortisol, low DHEAs and thyroid hormone imbalances, along with sleep deprivation, this can create an avalanche-like health decline that cannot just be fixed without significant changes in lifestyle and the assistance of healthcare professionals. So why am I giving you this dire picture? Because we often use the term hormones very loosely, but understanding these significant changes in our hormones and the consequences they can have on our whole sense of well-being matters and can really hold influence in the way we feel about ourselves as a mother, our relationships, and our identity. Can you see that it all starts early in our mothering journey? These changes are felt far beyond the first few weeks after childbirth. They play into how we set up our mothering practices now and how we see ourselves moving forward into the future. Physiological, structural, and biological changes are broad, and it would take pages and pages to write about them all. But I'll just speak to the relationship that this mother now has with her body. Changes in a woman's body during pregnancy and after childbirth mean that her body has shifted in various ways. She may not recognize parts of herself, and while she will regain structural strength and integrity in time, there will be parts of her body that may be altered for the long term. This can cause a level of grief and certainly adjustment. An obvious example is the woman's belly, the insulated home of her baby for the past 9 months, which she likely cherished and nurtured, the role that her belly had played so beautifully in growing and nourishing her baby. Feelings after birth, though, can switch when her belly no longer feels strong and supportive, but rather empty and soft. A lack of connection can ensue when our bodies look, feel, and function differently. Some mothers may feel less encouraged by what they see in the mirror, or feel disheartened when her body seems less trustworthy to function as it did before. This is normal. It takes time to recover from the weight of pregnancy and childbirth, and I'd like you to please remember that there is no magical date. Progress will be different for every mother, and whether she has experienced issues like prolapse, incontinence, perineal, or abdominal stitching. The recovery for these, as well as our existing or new musculoskeletal issues, cannot be ignored nor rushed. Neurological. As we discussed in episode 11, the mother's brain changes, and that relates to the increased neuroplasticity or the way that her brain is able to recognize a new environment and adapt its way of learning. This happens at critical stages of life, such as in the first 5 years, in adolescence, and to a greater degree in motherhood or matrescence. Now, there is nothing to downgrade here. This is one of the most exciting changes for a mother's identity. Why? Because it literally means that she gets to decide who it is that she wants to be now. And I'm going to say that again. Because it literally means that she gets to decide who it is that she wants to be now. It's a unique opportunity to become more contemplative, reflective, introspective, and decisive. What are her highest values now? Have they changed since becoming a mother? Does she want to go back to the work that she was doing before? Or is she craving something else? Using a different part of her brain, maybe something that feels more feminine or creative? Which parts of herself is she going to let go of, either temporarily or permanently? And which parts of herself is she bringing along for the journey? What is she curious about? Who does she want to surround herself with? Who and what is she calling in? Emotional. Have you heard it said that when you become a mother to the whole world? What do we mean by this? Isn't it that we have a revised sense of empathy, that we feel more, relate more, and care more? Of course, our innate compass of empathy has always been there, but it now seems to be activated in new ways. We may show our emotions more, be more open in expressing our vulnerabilities, and our drive for kindness and doing good in this world can be heightened. Social. In this new era of our life, we may feel a greater pull to connect with others, in particular other mothers and those that we feel drawn to. Noteworthy, mothers become more friendly and companionable. We may also find that this is a time of weeding out our friendship groups. Sometimes there are seasons of friendships, and there will be some people in our pre-baby lives that will organically drop off in their connection and support. And that's okay too. This is a time to find our new people, as it were. We bring in some of our friends with us, and we also expand our connections, making friends organically and intentionally through shared experiences of mothering. Relational. This can be a challenging time with those that are closest to us, especially in the early stages of parenting. Just remember that both the birthing woman and her partner are each going through a powerful transformation, and it takes time and a fair amount of patience to understand the new dynamic, their new roles, and how they relate to one another in these new experiences. It's important to dig deep and get to know one another all over again, carving out times in the day to communicate and spending time together. Couple time might look a little different for a while. Perhaps we need to lower our expectations while we fumble through and find what works. Behavioural. It's no surprises to hear that with so much activity in the body and brain, this will in turn affect our behaviour and the ways in which we go about our day. Motherhood is a personal development program of the highest order. It changes us in ways we didn't anticipate, ways in which we never thought possible, and has given us experiences that perhaps has surprised, delighted, and petrified us all at once. It's given us tolerance to boredom and monotony. Who would have thought that we could feed, change, settle, and connect with another human being multiple times each day? Maybe it's helped us to be more in the moment, fascinated and attuned to our babies mirroring and forcing us to pause and relax, even if it means sitting in the one spot for many hours each day. If you feel like you've changed, it's because you have. And whilst it might involve some loss, there is plenty of gain. A mother literally has the unique opportunity to reinvent herself. So get curious about these changes. Think of them as an upgrade. Offer yourself the same compassion that you offer others, especially your children. Allow yourself to accept motherhood in your own time, at your own pace, and in your own way. And don't be shy to reach out to others to share and normalize the identity shifts in motherhood. It's also never too late to reach out to a postpartum doula or a matrescence educator. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know the ways in which you've changed, what you've learned about yourself, and how this has helped your growth and development, both as a woman and as a mother. I hope you get a lot out of this episode. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that it offered something helpful to your own mothering experience. If you are a pregnant woman or know someone who is, head over to my website to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and contact list. And if you'd like to be better prepared for your postpartum, both practically and mentally, purchase the Peaceful Postpartum ebook, a 52-page interactive guide on what you need to know and what matters most in postpartum. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast, and we'll see you next time.